Back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions. I am your host, as always, Scott Johnson, and on today's show, we're going to be focusing on UFC on FX1, Guillard versus Miller. For that event, it will take place on January 20th, 2012, which is a Friday. Again, keep that in mind. It's our second installment of a Friday UFC event in recent memory. I will be predicting the 4 main card fights, including our main event between Melvin Guillard and Jim Miller. I will also only be doing 3 preliminary fights. Again, I'll explain that when I do my preliminary picks. There are only 3 preliminary fights. Now, before we get into the predictions, at UFC 142, I went 6-4 overall. Should have been 7-3 with the Eric Silva DQ. I'll talk about that briefly in Kamikaze Countdown. 6-4, again, not a record I'm overly happy with, but still above 500 and improving. I did pick up a little cash personally because my prediction for fight of the night, Barboza versus Edom, worked out, and I combined that with the San Francisco 49ers defeating the New Orleans Saints. So a nice little pickup of cash there for me personally. Before we get into the predictions, Sports Interaction, as always, and I say that as always very loosely, providing me with betting odds and sponsoring my show. This actually will be the last show, Sports Interaction, at least last show for now. Sports Interaction will be sponsoring. I'll talk about that more later on, but for now, please check out the link in the description below. There is a sign-up bonus of up to $125 if you click on that link and sign up with Sports Interaction. So please click on that. They'd like to see as many clicks as possible, as this is my last show. So if you are considering betting on the event, please click on that link in the description below. MMABettingOdds.com, fantastic website, always supporting Kamikaze Overdrive 100%, posting my videos and some write-ups that I provide for the event. So please check out MMABettingOdds.com. Couchfighter.co, a new host, a new partner of Kamikaze Overdrive. They'll be hosting my show, so I appreciate that. Them very much doing that. An excellent site, lots of fantastic content there, so please go there, check that out. MMA Crips, as always, thank you for hosting. And before we get into the actual predictions, the Prediction Grand Prix, this event will be the final event of round number 4. It will decide who goes to the finals and who goes to the bronze medal game. Currently, Klubel has a 36-30 lead over Marksman in one semifinal. On the other semifinal, the White Dragon is tied 26-26 with Kane Gotti. International as well, it's USA versus Scotland on one side of the bracket, Canada versus Australia, 32 competitors, down to the final 4, down to the final event to see who gets to go for the gold. Either way, congratulations to all 4, and best of luck with this event. And let's get to my preliminary picks. Alright, it's time to look at the preliminary fights for this event. Now, I'm only doing 3 predictions for the prelims, not 6. And part of the reason is I'm cutting back on some of the fights I'm going to be predicting. If I don't get a good feel for it, I'm just not going to touch it. I will cover all the main card fights, but some of the prelims I'm going to leave alone. In this event, I'm only going to cover 3. So here we go. Kicking it off with Charlie Brenneman versus Daniel Roberts in the welterweight division. Now, both guys are grappling-based fighters. The key to this fight, for me, should be Brenneman's work ethic and his overall endurance. Now, I really can't see Daniel Roberts outworking Brenneman, even though Roberts will be very comfortable off his back because he's a BJJ practitioner, and Brenneman's certainly going to look to put him on his back for the duration of this bout. This won't be the most exciting matchup, but I'm taking Charlie Brenneman by decision. Up next, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Kamal Shalrus. Shalrus did not look great in his debut, despite having Olympic wrestling credentials. His technique looked stiff, his takedowns looked telegraphed, and although he strikes with power, his striking technique leaves a lot to be desired. Now, Nurmagomedov is undefeated with equal number wins by submission and knockout. The Russian has big-time power and should have a speed and technical advantage. I'm going to take Nurmagomedov to debut with a knockout victory over Kamal Shalrus. Finally, Eric Schaefer versus Jorge Rivera meet in the middleweight division. These are 2 UFC veterans, and they're giving us another installment of the grappler versus striker stylistic matchup. Rivera usually has trouble with talented grapplers, and Schaefer's a BJJ black belt with 8 submission wins. And if Schaefer can get this fight to the ground, he should be able to grind out a victory, either submission or just a decision. But on this fight, I'm going to take Jorge Rivera's striking, and I'm going to take him to win this fight by knockout using his power. I will be intrigued to see what the odds are for this matchup, but Jorge Rivera defeating Eric Schaefer by knockout. Those are my preliminary picks. Let's go over to the main card. In the bantamweight division, 11-1 Mike the Hulk Easton welcomes 14-6 Jared the Jackhammer Papazian. Easton debuted with an impressive knockout victory and has won 6 in a row, while Papazian has won 3 in a row in 8 of his last 9. Now, originally this bout was slated to feature Easton locking up with Ken Stone, but Stone pulled out with an injury and Papazian got the call to replace him. Now, the first thing that strikes me with this matchup is how did it find its way onto the main card? Easton looked decent in his debut, but nothing spectacular, and Papazian isn't exactly bringing a huge name with him. Now, Papazian has the majority of his wins by decision with 8, The biggest name on his resume is probably Jimmy Rivera, who defeated Papazian by decision. Now, the jackhammer uses a mix of grappling and brawling. He will shoot for a takedown and has shown decent top control and ground and pound. On the negative side, he's been tapped out 4 times, so while he is willing to take the fight to the ground, he is still a little bit vulnerable when it gets there. Now, his striking is aggressive and for the most part consists of wild looping hooks with 5 knockout wins while never having been stopped himself. Now, in Mike Easton's debut, he shut down Brian Bloodsworth with a sequence of knees to the head and body from the clinch. He trains with bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz, and early in the Bloodworth fight, he showed comparable footwork to the champion. But it wasn't really until he abandoned that flashy movement where he really started finding success and his range. He throws a lot of feints, he does a good job of cutting off the cage, and he attacks with power. He does a nice job setting up his strikes and combinations, for example using a left hook to the body followed by a right low kick. He has a black belt in Taekwondo, and if the fight does go to the ground, he has a BJJ black belt as well. Now, Easton holds impressive wins over Ultimate Fighter competitors Josh Ferguson and the eventual winner of the show, John Dodson. In his debut, it took him a round to really settle in and feel comfortable in the UFC. I would expect that he will find his range much quicker this time around. In the footage I've seen of Papazian, he will certainly not shy away from a good scrap, and that's what I'm expecting this fight will be. Papazian is actually looking to enter the UFC flyweight division, and even though he will have a height advantage over Easton, I think the Hulk's physical style will simply be too much for him. I like Easton's overall skill set, and this is a huge opportunity for him to showcase himself on the main card. His only career defeat came as a result of an injury. He has finished 5 of his last 7 wins with 2 submissions and 3 knockouts. So my prediction for this fight is Mike Easton to defeat Jared Papazian by TKO. In the UFC heavyweight division, 7-2 Christian Morecraft will take on 6-4 Pat H.D. Barry. Barry has dropped 2 in a row in 4 of his last 6, while Morecraft suffered a KO loss to Matt Mitrione in his last appearance. This is a very important fight for both fighters. With the UFC enveloping the Strikeforce heavyweights, both men, the loser eventually, could get the walking papers with another loss. Now, HD is a K1 level kickboxer, while Morecraft combines a brawling style with some grappling skills. Both guys have suffered losses that fall right into the capabilities of their respective opponent. 3 of Barry's 4 defeats have come by tap out, while Morecraft has 4 submission wins, including his lone victory in the octagon. Now, Barry's Achilles heel is his lack of grappling skills, but he has been training a death clutch with Brock Lesnar and the rest of that group, so we should see some improvements here. But his submission losses really weren't the result of Barry being dominated on the ground. Against Mirko Krokop, he got hurt standing and eventually submitted, and against Stefan Struve and Tim Hague, he was having success with his striking, but made a minor mistake in the process, which eventually led to being tapped out. Now, even though Pat's grappling game is his weak point, his takedown offense is fairly good, having stopped 12 of 13 attempts, including stopping 6 against Joey Beltran. Now, since joining the UFC, Morecraft has suffered 2 knockouts, getting stopped by Stefan Struve and by Matt Mitrione. He's a brawler, and his striking consists of a very rough 1-2 that he will try to close the distance behind. Until the knockout against Struve, he was actually doing really well with his ground and pound and top control, where he closed the distance on the feet and took Struve down. Against Mitrione, Morecraft only landed 22 of 96 strikes, and because of this, he wasn't able to get in tight like he did against Struve. The key to his takedowns is his striking, helping him to cut off the cage, because he's not a natural wrestler with that athletic ability. Mitrione used lateral movement and quickness to keep Morecraft chasing him, while Struve backed straight up, which led to the clinch and the eventual takedown. If Morecraft can get Barry to the ground, he has all the skills to end the fight. As I said, he dominated Struve on the mat, blooding him up with his ground and pound and smothering him with his size, and he showed his grappling skills when he reversed and submitted Sean McCorkle. Standing, Barry's striking is elite. He has heavy hands and devastating leg kicks. Against Struve, he had issues with the distance, but appeared to figure it out as the match was progressing. Now, Morecraft is going to have physical advantages, 6.5 inches of reach, 7 inches of height, and he will be the heavier fighter. The difference will be Barry's speed and technique. Look for Morecraft to chase HD where his size could actually work against him. The reason Barry couldn't get in range against Struve was more that not just Struve's size, but that Struve is a trained kickboxer, where Morecraft is not. Barry will use movement to maintain distance, his leg kicks to slow Morecraft down, and his superior boxing to target the openings in the lesser striker. If Morecraft gets this fight to the ground, he does win it. But I wasn't impressed with what I saw against Mitrione, and Barry certainly has the tools to duplicate that fight, so I'm going to take Pat Barry to defeat Christian Morecraft by knockout. Moving to the co-main event of the evening, this is my certified overdrive fight of the night. And for it, we are in the welterweight division. It's 29-11. Dwayne Bang Ludwig takes on 32-10-1 Josh the Dentist Neer. Ludwig has won 2 in a row since returning to welterweight, while Neer has taken 7 of his last 8 matchups. With a combined 83 professional bouts, there isn't much that these two haven't seen. On the ground, Neer has 11 wins by submission and a background in wrestling. Ludwig doesn't have as lofty numbers with 6 wins by tap out. Neer's wins on the ground have come at a higher level with notable victories over Mac Danzig and Melvin Guillard. Now, neither man completes a lot of takedowns overall, but I would give the edge to Neer on the mat simply because Ludwig has been submitted 5 times. Even though Neer would have an advantage if he did take the fight to the ground, he has expressed a willingness to keep his fight standing, which is what should be expected here. Now, both men are talented, but vastly different strikers. Bang Ludwig is a world-class kickboxer with a 48-7-1 record to go along with 10 MMA knockouts. In his last bout, he put his Muay Thai technique on display, defeating another talented Muay Thai fighter in Amir Sadallah. In that bout, he outlanded Sadallah 125-96, giving him his second consecutive 100-plus striking total. Ludwig has a vast arsenal consisting of counter-striking, crisp combinations, nice level changes, a variety of leg strikes. He will also incorporate elbows, knees, he will use the Thai clinch, and he does all of this with power. Now, Josh Neer doesn't have the Muay Thai pedigree of Ludwig, but he is just as dangerous a striker with 17 career knockouts. He is more of a brawler than a technician, and he isn't afraid to take his opponent's best shot to deliver his. Now, he relies heavily on the clinch. In his last bout, he put on an elbow clinic, eventually cutting his opponent and stopping the fight. In close, he will use short elbow strikes, and from the outside, he has a left jab to set the range, and he attacks with power both in his hands and kicks. Now, Ludwig and Neer will leave everything in the cage, and don't be shocked if one or both fighters gets busted wide open. Now, neither guy has exceptional conditioning. Partially, this can be attributed to the fact they push such a heavy pace early on. Neer is all offense, which can create problems. Against Mac Danzig, he was swinging wildly, making little contact, but taking damage from the more technical striker. And against Nick Diaz, he got picked apart on the outside. Neer also likes to use the Thai clinch, but that may prove difficult against such a seasoned Muay Thai fighter like Ludwig. Now, Keith Wisniewski hurt Neer with body shots, and I expect Ludwig to be aware of this. He will also use his kicks to maintain distance and counter when Neer presses forward. This is going to be an all-out war. Neer is a very tough guy and that he will not quit in a fight, but I was really impressed with Ludwig's last performance. As long as he doesn't fade late, he should be able to get the better of his opponent. So my pick is Dwayne Bang Ludwig to defeat Josh Neer by decision. In the main event of the evening, top-ranked lightweights 46-10-3 Melvin, the young assassin Guillard, and Jim Miller 20-3 will meet inside the octagon. Now, both had recent winning streaks snapped. Guillard had won 5 in a row and Miller 7. Heading into this fight, it will be very interesting to see how each responds from their defeats for 2 reasons. Now, neither had lost since 2009, and when they lost, they were both soundly defeated. Guillard was submitted, and Miller dominated by Ben Henderson. Now, it's interesting to note that Guillard's pre-fight antics in the Lozon fight when Bruce Buffer was introducing him. Melvin was bouncing around and acting as if he had already won the bout. This attitude appeared to carry over into his match, where he abandoned strategy and fought recklessly. In a similar fashion, Miller seemed to believe his own hype when he fought Ben Henderson. He was constantly committing to submission holds, and he was attempting to earn the accolades for submitting a very tough-to-tap-out opponent in Ben Henderson. Now, Miller attempted 6 submissions and seemed to exhaust himself while accomplishing absolutely nothing. For this fight, I expect that both men will fight in a style more akin to what brought them to the top of the division. Now, there's no denying that Guillard is a talented striker. He has 19 knockouts, landing roughly 3 strikes per minute, and his style makes him difficult to attack, where he avoids 69% of his opponent's strikes. His style is reminiscent of a jouster, bouncing forward to attack and then disengaging. But as effective as this is, it does have its negative points. The excess movement can be taxing on his endurance, and a well-timed counter combined with his forward energy can be devastating, as we saw with Joe Lozon. Now, Jim Miller's style is a little more traditional, but also effective. He doesn't have the massive knockout numbers, but we have seen him do damage with his hands, stopping Kamal Chalarouz and dropping Dwayne Ludwig. Against the seasoned striker in Dwayne Ludwig, Miller's striking looked good, mixing things up, and eventually scoring the knockdown. I like Guillard's explosiveness and his elusive style, but his recklessness, combined with Miller's composure and overall skill set, are a big factor as well. The ground game could prove the deciding factor. Jim Miller is a BJJ black belt and has a background in wrestling and sambo. He has an impressive 11 submission victories, averaging 2.15 takedowns per fight. Conversely, Guillard has been tapped out 8 times, including all 5 of his UFC losses. Now, since joining Greg Jackson's camp, Melvin has shown improved takedown defense and picked up wins over solid grapplers like Evan Dunham and Shane Roller, both by knockout. But in preparation for Miller, Guillard has said he has trained exclusively at the Black Zillion camp with Rashad Evans and Anthony Johnson, so it'll be interesting to see how he's prepared both mentally and physically for Miller. An area that I give Miller a clear advantage in is his overall endurance. Guillard has shown signs of slowing down in the fights again, maybe because of his style, and going into the second half he seems to have issues, while Miller really hasn't. Now, Miller's never been stopped, but Melvin Guillard has the power to change this. That Melvin's style leaves openings that the New Jersey native can capitalize on. Miller's averaged 3 submission attempts per fight over his last 5 appearances, and if given the opportunity against Guillard, I really think he will have the ability to finish him. So my prediction is Jim Miller to defeat Melvin Guillard by submission. Alright, welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown. There's a lot to talk about. I just did a Jim Miller prediction. I'm 0-4 calling Jim Miller fights. I got off the schneid in the Ben Henderson situation when he defeated Clay Guida. Hopefully I have the same success here. I don't want to go to 0-5 with Jim Miller. Maybe I'll have to stop calling his matchups altogether. Probably not. Now, lots of things to talk about. Eric Silva, I'm going to talk about the DQ quickly. I think it wasn't the proper call, but at the same time, I don't think Joe Rogan calling out Mario Yamasaki after the fight and questioning his integrity and asking him to potentially look at the review and say, no, I was wrong. I thought that was unprofessional and not warranted. I don't think that should ever happen again inside the cage. Now, what I thought of the situation, I think Silva did land a couple of glancing blows to the back of the head, but the majority of them didn't find their way there. And I think we've seen fights with far more significant blows to the back of the head that went uncalled. I'm thinking Vitor Belfort versus Rich Franklin and Yoshihiro Akiyama. Either way, I think that fight will be overturned and it'll go to a no decision, even though Silva should get a loss, or should get a W. And the UFC said they're going to progress with him as if he won, so that's good. Secondly, Anthony Johnson not making weight, unacceptable. The fact he carried on like he didn't care. I'm hearing rumors at this point that he's cut. Probably by the time you're watching this video, he will have been cut, at least I would expect. He'll probably come back at some point. I think he'll have to fight at least 2 fights outside of the UFC where he can show he can make whatever weight he attempts to go on, whether it be light heavyweight, middleweight, heavyweight, super heavyweight, whatever. He'll need to fight at least twice, proving he can make the weight and fight on fight well in after making the weight, because it was clear he was gassing last night and looked terrible. And of course, we heard all the lead up. He's huge. He's dominating Rashad Evans in training. Yeah, let's try and make weight so we can fight on a competitive level with everyone else. Either way, bad on Anthony Johnson. The stand-ups in that fight I thought were very quick. I thought they were a little bit too quick, and that was an example of like a referee doing it too early and not allowing the fighters to play it out. Opposite of it, we go back to Strikeforce when Tyrone Woodley, who I actually wanted to call out of all this other stuff at UFC 142 hadn't gone down, Tyrone Woodley looked like an absolute punk when he took on Jordan Meehan, simply taking him down and laying on top of him, and that was brutal. He did not attempt anything. Meehan landed more strikes from the bottom. Meehan's performance was nothing to brag about. I think he could have done more in that fight. But the referee standing there staring at him, laying on top, in his guard, doing nothing, simply riding out the round. The referee sits there and watches him, lets it do it for a minute, and then waits 2 more minutes to see if anything happens, and then stands him up with 35 seconds left in the round. That's stupid. Either way, I think they're both examples of the ends of the spectrum that need to be corrected. I don't think you can really come up with a judgment call off like a 45-second stand-up or 35-second stand-up, but the referee just needs to use their best perception of what's going on. Either way, both examples of what should not be done. Lots out of UFC 142 to talk about. Clearly, I think there'll be discussion going forth. Either way, thanks for listening. Kamikaze Countdown. Alright guys, so those are my predictions for UFC on FX1, Guillard versus Miller. This event takes place on a Friday, don't miss out. Grand Prix prediction competitors, 4 left. Klubal, Marksman, White Dragon, and Kane Gotti. Get your picks in. This will be the final event for round 4. The winners advance to the finals. The losers go to the bronze medal game. So fantastic for being there. Don't forget to get your picks in. As always, MMABettingOdds.com. Thank you very much for supporting my videos. Go to the website, guys. Check it out. It has all kinds of really cool tools to help you maximize your MMA betting value and what you can pull in an event. Plus, you can see the write-up I wrote. Really cool website. Couchfighter.co. Check them out as well. Really cool site. They're going to be hosting my videos. They've got a lot of great MMA-related content and recaps, and just generally speaking, a fantastic website that I'm now associated with. Very happy to be with. So please check out couchfighter.co. MMA Crips, again, another site. They're promoting my video as well. Appreciate MMA Crips. Fantastic site as well. Cool forums. A lot of great people there. So please check them out. SportsInteraction.com. The last time I will be, for the foreseeable future, that I will be supporting them as they've opted. They don't feel I'm doing a good enough job promoting their website and getting enough bring enough notoriety to their MMA betting options. So please click on the link in the description below to get your sign-up bonus if you want to bet on MMA with SportsInteraction.com. And make sure you tune in next week, as now that I won't be contractually obligated to speak about Sports Interaction in such a positive manner, I'll probably give you a couple of my negative interactions with the website. So thank you for watching. As always, thank you for supporting. I look forward to hearing all your comments across the internet, whether it be on YouTube, Bloody Elbow, ShareDog, any of those great websites. And the next event, UFC on Fox, is going to be a barn burner return of Chael Sonnen and Rashad Evans in the main event against Phil Davis. Michael Bisping, everyone's favorite. And on that note, I'm out of here. Have a good weekend.